Hello, Internet. Gino, that Pinguino Grieco here again with another episode of Deep Listens, and it is time to enter the Decagon. It is time to talk about Final Fantasy X. Again, Part 2.
What's your normal saying whenever you start a podcast with your normal host, the fucked up-a-gon?
The fucked up-a-gon. That is what I usually say when things are going badly.
Oh, okay.
But the Decagon because it's 10 sides, because Final Fantasy X. And today, we're going to be discussing everything, and, well, we're going to start at Luca, and we're going to go till we feel like we can't talk anymore. The hopeful endpoint will be like around Macalania, but we'll see. We've got time pressures, and we've got so much outside of Final Fantasy X to discuss today. It's honestly a little bit odd. So first thing, a little bit also, I'm with Chris ZombiePie Redacted, as always.
As always.
So let's get the housekeeping out of the way first. You can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com, or deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. Like and subscribe is a thing that I'm told to say to increase engagement. Like the podcast, review it on iTunes. Apparently it works, I don't know, or other things that people use to listen to things. The ship don't stop. 2, now that we've got that out of the way, the Giantbomb Community Endurance Run is coming fast upon us. The hoofbeats are strong, and both of us are doing Final Fantasy-related things.
Jesus Christ.
My Final Fantasy-related thing, which people might care about because this is a Final Fantasy podcast.
Oh, I can't believe you roped me into this shit again.
You volunteered. Also, I'm doing something of my own volition without blaming others for it. My thing is going to be playing Final Fantasy V in a 4-job fiesta. However, because it is a fiesta, I will be using piñatas to pick my jobs. So you
one
can
of
check
which is
that out.
John Cena.
No. So, see, I have 4 piñatas because there are 4 crystals that break in Final Fantasy V. The wind crystal is going to be represented by the wind piñata, which is Buzz Lightyear in a spaceship. And the wind crystal shards will be represented by green airheads because it's wind. Then the water crystal is represented by a pirate ship of Jake and the Neverland Pirates, and the crystal shards are represented by chocolate gold doubloons. The fire crystal is represented by a red hot chili pepper, and of course the crystal shards are atomic fireballs, as they can only be. And final crystal of all is the earth crystal, and it is represented by the rock. Right now, there's some other WWE All-Stars on there, and I'm going to fix that.
I'm going to tell you that your WWE piñata is incredibly out of date.
Of course it is.
Yes.
Are you telling me that Party City isn't up to date on the current WWE storylines?
Or roster?
I saw a sign for CM Punk in the Party City I was at, so I'm going to say they are very out of sync.
Awesome.
So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to be playing that, and by crystal shards, I mean I'm going to be picking jobs randomly based on which piece of candy I pull out of the piñata. I will be using piñata rules, and I will be racing Billy.
So you are also eating for your stream?
I mean, I might eat the candy. We'll see. However, you've currently raised the most funds for Giantbomb Community Endurance Run. You've currently raised the most funds at $325 as we speak right now. Yep. It's constantly threatening to go up. Because
if it goes up, it might actually kill me.
You decided that for your fundraising.
No, my original idea was rejected because you and other people thought that it would basically kill me.
Yeah, because it was a bad plan. You were going to hurt yourself. I had to stop you.
My original plan is I would play by default like 5 hours of Final Fantasy goodness, and then for every $50 to $75 donated, I would play an extra 5 hours.
Where would you be now?
I would probably be like at 25 hours.
Yeah.
I can't do math.
I can't do 50 times 6 is 300. So 6 times 5 hours is how many hours?
35 hours.
That would have been bad.
That would have hurt.
That would have been a bad time for you. There were only 72 hours in the community endurance run.
And I would have been playing more than half of them at some point.
You would have needed to sleep for some of them, I would assume. And your number keeps going up. That's the other thing.
Okay, so the real plan, the current plan is...
But we're 2 weeks out in front of the event, and you're at $325 of your $500 goal. That would have been so bad.
Yeah, it would have been like 100 hours. So the current plan is I'm going to play Final Fantasy VIII, and I didn't think my donation incentives through. I think this is now something that I have very clearly realized. So I am going to probably play 24 hours of Final Fantasy VIII.
Yes.
And there were other donation incentives that have now been met. The only ones that have not been met are Omega Weapon and finishing the game.
That is true. However, there are still many characters that need to be named. And you are naming characters based on people donating to name said characters.
No, this is your idea when you realized that I was going to hit 500 and you still wanted to provide a motive for people to donate.
No, I suggested this because I did this exact same thing when I was speedrunning Final Fantasy VIII, and Final Fantasy VIII has the most opportunities for this in the entire series. It has the most things to name.
And you let your friend just ruin your time.
Yeah,
and
he did.
Everything got named Zell.
No. Someone named, I think, Irvine or Renoa Irvine. I mean, Squall or Renoa Irvine, which screwed up my menus a little bit. However, I'm proposing, listeners, I had an idea yesterday, an epiphany, one would say.
You've had like 2 ideas. You just backtrack on your original idea.
Yeah, because I had a better one. I realized that my first idea was good, while well-intentioned, was wrong. At first, I thought it would be fun to have the whole team named Irvine because in memory of my speedrun where someone tried to do that to me. Then I realized that Zell is kind of the most iconic character with his giant stupid face tattoo in Final Fantasy VIII, so maybe we should name everything Zell. You know, Squall's name, Renoa's name, Renoa's dog, all of the summons. You can name one of the final bosses, just all Zell. But then I realized that there was a better name that everything should have, and that is Selphie.
My least favorite character in the game.
She is your least favorite character. And on top of being your least favorite character, there's a term that the kids use now. Selfie. Yeah. It means to take a picture of oneself. So what I propose, listeners, is that we name every single one of the GFs and characters in Final Fantasy VIII
that have not been named so far.
Right now, Squall, Renoa, Jumbo Cactuar, and Griever, the lion, Squall's lion, have names on them.
Oh, that's right. I do get to name that.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that the person who named Griever will go from Zell to Selphie, because what I want is for you to have to take a selfie every time you name something Selphie.
Oh, man.
And then we could have a selfie collage. When it's all said and done. Also, I want at the last fight, the final struggle of Final Fantasy VIII, I want you to be fighting a giant lion named Selphie with a team composed of Selphie, and Little B, summoning something named Selphie so that there are simultaneously 4 selfies on screen at the same time, and then you take a selfie while it's happening. I want this Ouroboros to eat all the way around itself.
It's a real Mobius.
Yes, that is what I want. So, listeners, if you want to donate, you can go to fundraise.pencilsofpromise.org/GB Community Endurance Run 7. So 7 is going to be spelled in Roman numerals, VII. So that is, again, fundraise.pencilsofpromise.org/GB Community Endurance Run 7, VII. So we kind of ran through what the community endurance run that we're both participating in, but it is actually, let me explain it for the people who are not aware. It is a charity fundraiser that the Giantbomb community participates in once every year, generally in April, though this time it's in early May. And we have been for the last 3 years, I believe. Yeah, about last 3 years.
It's what inspired this Final Fantasy Blood Pact, by the way.
Yes, it is. It all started here. And for the last 3 years or so.
It all started with Final Fantasy VIII, too. So it's like we've come back together. It's a 180.
Yes. This is how better to have Ouroboros than going back to where you started. But the community endurance run for like the last 3 years, we've been raising money for Pencils of Promise, which is a charity that builds schools, trains teachers, and sends kids to school in developing nations. It's a really excellent charity. They take 100% of donated money from fundraisers like ours and put those towards causes. There's not a cut that goes to their staff and to their overhead. They raise their own overhead costs. They raise their own money for that sort of stuff through gala events that they throw, like the actual staff of the charity throws. So you don't have to worry that any money that you're donating is actually going to pay someone's salary or going to, rent or something like that. It's all going towards the causes. And this year we are hoping to raise money for the WASH program, which is water and sanitation. What's the H? Health?
Hospitality.
Hygiene. Water, access, sanitation, hygiene. So the idea is basically to teach kids in areas where this knowledge is not necessarily commonplace, how to drink from untainted water sources, how to keep clean, how to brush their teeth, basic sort of stuff that you don't really think of as having a huge impact on people, but diarrhea is one of the leading causes of death in the world,
Correct.
Unfortunately, due to stuff like this. Also, hundreds of thousands of days of school are missed by kids due to preventable illnesses, simply due to hygiene. So we thought that this would be a nice switch up. We've been doing scholarships up until now, but the WASH program is $100 per student through the program, and so we think we can have a little bit more of an impact this way. Our goal for this year is raising $5,000, so that means 50 kids through the program, if my math checks out. So you can check that out. Again, fundraise.pencilsofpromise.org/GB Community Endurance Run VII 7. VII. So with that out of the way, emails or
we have
feedback.
emails?
We have feedback.
For the first time in ever?
Yes, we have feedback. I already mentioned at the top of the show how you can get in touch with the show. I'm not going to say it again. But what I am going to do is read our feedback.
BigBillsHouseOfNasties.com.
Yes, BigBillsHouseOfNasty.xxx. We've got a couple of emails here. Let me see if I can... Where'd you go, email?
One of them's ridiculous. The other is just hilarious in its own right.
Yeah, one of them...
It has nothing to do with freaking Final Fantasy, but we're going to read it anyways, because God damn it, you took the time to write to us, and we care. We care, even if you write stupid garbage. We will read it.
We have low standards.
If you have your Nekopara fan fiction, we will read it on air. Oh, wait, no.
Don't do that.
One of these days, I'm going to sneak it onto this podcast, Gino. Just you watch.
No, thanks. No, thanks. I'm good. I'm having trouble getting onto the email account.
Which of these two emails do you believe is the more ridiculous? The non-Final Fantasy one or the Final Fantasy one?
The Final Fantasy one is not that ridiculous, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to get access to that one. The gist of it was, blitzball is not that bad.
Blitzball is terrible.
It's bad, but it's not. That was the gist of it. Sorry, Ryan. I don't have your email handy.
We will read it when we have the opportunity. It's not like this is going to be the last podcast of this series.
Yes.
We're probably going to do far more than kind of like your promise when we did Final Fantasy VII. We were supposed to reduce the amount of time we were putting our soul into Final Fantasy podcasts.
We did more.
We did
more. So the email that I do have access to, or the comment that we do have access to, that was made on the Mobius Final Fantasy podcast.
One of the greatest games ever made.
The one that was on the Mobius comments. This is by New Jersey for Life, spelled Lyfe. This is by NJ4, the number 4, Lyfe. And he says, I wanted to send this email to the Final Fantasy crew rather than the normal cadre of podcast hosts. I am a longtime Jerseyan who takes umbrage with your views on the Brooklyn Nets. They have plenty of talent just waiting to play a complete season healthy. There's no telling what Jeremy Lin will be able to do once healthy. Also, there's no denying who much Chris Levert has improved in the last year. I'm going to say that's how much. That should have been how much. Yeah, I get everyone thinks the Kevin Garnett-Paul Pierce trade is a hindrance, but they still have 2 first-round picks. I mean, the 76ers have rolled the dice on draft picks the past 5 years, and look where that's gotten them. Joel Embiid looks pretty good. I don't know. But plus, they have money to spend, and there's no telling how many players are excited to play with Jeremy Lin as the Nets rebuild. So once again, I love the podcast, but I think your criticism of the Nets is entirely misplaced. They had a bad season, sure, but it was a byproduct of injuries and nothing else. And nothing else? Nothing else.
How many different ways can you say you're wrong?
Nothing else?
I mean,
I don't know. I mean,
that Kevin Garnett-Paul Pierce trade is the clearest example of short-term trading for a one final push to get to the finals, and then it didn't work, and now look where that got you.
They traded almost a half decade of draft picks away.
They're not going to have a secured first-round draft pick until 2020. This decade is done.
There are kids who were born when the Nets traded their picks away who are now, I believe, in kindergarten or preschool, not having seen a world where the Nets owned their first-round draft pick. That's how bad this is.
And
like, by the time they get them back.
Gino, you're a New Yorker, are you not?
I am.
So why don't you talk about how profitable it is to bank on the Linsanity train?
So it is very profitable. I would say Jeremy Lin is one of my favorite basketball players. I think he's quite good at basketball. The injury thing is correct. But the ceiling on this team with him healthy and Brook Lopez doing Brook Lopez things and a whole lot of just not great players, like mediocre players that are also old. It's hard to have a bunch of mediocre players. At one
point, they played half of their D-League team in a main event match.
It's hard to have a team that is so lacking in long-term prospects and also they're old. Like, usually you have a team where they're young, but they're figuring things out, or they're old, but they know what the fuck they're doing.
Or you have a D-League affiliate that has promise.
Yeah. It's hard to assemble a roster full of so many people who have reached their ceiling. I don't know what they're doing. Like,
Levert
it seems like they're getting better.
But he's not gonna raise an entire team.
Of course not.
You have money to spend, but it's slim pickings.
Yeah, no one wants their money.
Top 4 draft picks are all going to go to the top players. And then you're not going to be able to trade any of your current roster to get veterans or people who can elevate this team to playoff contention.
Oh my goodness, I haven't looked at their roster in a really long time. Oh no. Okay, now you know what? Now that I'm looking at their roster, I see a lot of people who I guess make sense if...
I'm looking at it also. That's not a team that plays a shitload of defense, though. It's a pick-and-roll team that's going to get annihilated by better teams.
Here are the players on that team that I think are any good. Jeremy Lin, Brook Lopez, not in that order. Probably Brook's better than Jeremy. Brook, Jeremy, Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, and Karis LeVert might be good.
Might.
might be good. I think everyone else could have been. It could be anyone. And
so how's
oh
the
my
bench?
God, the reclamation projects on this team. There's a bunch of dudes who I thought were out of the league, who are all assembled onto this one team of misfit toys.
So how's that bench? It's not that great.
Quincy Acey, Trevor Booker, Spencer Dinwiddie.
Really? What?
Randy Foye, Archie Goodwin.
Retired.
Okay, Quincy Acey, who I believe was drafted by the Nuggets, who then went to I think he was the Nuggets, then went to the Knicks, where he washed out and took a train across town and ended up with the Nets. Trevor Booker, who likewise washed out, I think with Utah most recently. Spencer Dinwiddie, who also has washed out someplace else. Randy Foye, who's been on, I think, every team at this point. Archie Goodwin, who the Suns gave up on. Justin Hamilton, who was given up on by the Nuggets. Joe Harris, who's been given up on as well.
So they're all together. It's all a bunch of misfits that are somehow going to elevate each other.
Yep.
Playing against teams that are far superior to them and have
hope. This is
the
Bizarro World version of the Miami Heat of this year, except they're all bad and play below their standards.
And talk shit about the 76ers all you want, but they have hope because they have a secured future.
Yeah, I mean, I would be much happier with Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, Dario Saric.
Is probably going to be one of the most improved players next year.
Yes.
Bar none. One of the most improved players next year.
I mean,
they're going to have another secured draft pick to help him out.
Joel Embiid was the best center in the NBA until he went down.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
he had not played basketball in 2 years. That's insane. Ben Simmons is probably going to be one of the best point guards in his class, and he's 6'10".
And I'm sorry. I'm still trying to get over this. This is a New Jerseyite who cares about... I thought that the Brooklyn Nets were among the least engaged fans of the entire NBA.
Oh, they very much are. I've been to Brooklyn Nets games before, and the crowd is half empty. I have been... I did not purchase the tickets because they were given to me, but it was incredible. I went to, I think it was a Brooklyn Nets Rockets game. The Nets actually beat the Rockets, but the crowd was completely empty. The arena, Barclays, really nice, but the crowd was pretty much dead the whole time.
All that Russian oligarch money will get you nowhere.
Yeah, and James Harden basically looked like he didn't want to be there because Dwight was still there at the time. Yeah. So it's a bad team. They did bad things. I will
feel to this New Jerseyite as a Sacramento Kings fan, shit's gonna get rough.
You know what? And the thing is, they can't even lose their way out of this malaise.
No, they can't. They can't tank because they have no secure draft picks, so there's no purpose to tanking.
No, they're tanking for Boston. The thing that baffled me the most, and this is the last thing I'm going to say before we get into Final Fantasy, it is hard for me to imagine picking up this many cast-offs and also rans who have some sort of NBA skill and experience and still coming up with the worst record in the league. It's not like these guys don't know how to play basketball. They know, they're just bad.
Yeah, at least the 76ers last year had an excuse.
Yeah.
They were all way too young to be playing in the majors.
And they were trying to lose. This Nets team has no incentive to lose. They gain nothing by losing games, and yet they still lose.
Boston in the process.
All they get from losing games is fans leaving the stands and not showing
and possibly watching the Celtics.
Yeah, and saying, "Wow, that guy should have been in our jersey." But yes, I'm sorry, NJ for life. You're wrong. They're a very bad team. They've been poorly run for a very long time. It's not going to get better for a while. Jeremy Lin is not attracting players.
No.
Try to think of a team, any team, that doesn't have at least one player who would more attract a free agent than Jeremy Lin. Who are these people who are going to be like, I just got to play with Jeremy Lin? If he's the best player on your team, you're not attracting players.
Boogie Cousins would attract more players than Jeremy Lin.
Other teams have players, too. Like, Kristaps Porzingis would attract more players than Jeremy Lin. And the Knicks are bad.
The Knicks are real bad.
They shouldn't get any free agents. They don't deserve them. But they deserve them more than the Nets.
Phil Jackson should know better. But okay, the basketball. What?
And to transition, Luca begins in a excellent way, in a way that I think is very relevant. So the section of Luca in Final Fantasy X, I believe,
you're right.
with a very relevant
we
quote
can legitimately tie it to
the New Jersey Nets. The announcers in Luca say, "Here come the Aurochs folks. They are basically a statistical impossibility. I've never seen a team this bad.
They're a living, breathing statistical impossibility. I've never seen a team this bad.
Your 2017 Brooklyn Nets. Just sad and bad." And so, with that transition, we need to make that a meme. We need to take the quote from Final Fantasy X and just superimpose the Brooklyn Nets. That's probably going to be the picture of this podcast. I can make that happen.
Okay. Yeah.
So, Final Fantasy X. We're in Luca now.
I think that might have been the funniest letter you've ever read on your podcast, even the proper podcast.
Thank you, New Jersey for Life. Thank you for your commentary. We're sorry.
If you're New Jersey for Life and you are listening to this podcast, keep sending us emails.
Please try and convince me. Good luck.
Or just have the basketball 5-minute be a part of this podcast series.
I'm totally fine with the basketball 5-minute. I kind of wanted to pull Pete into this, and he just comes on, just goes, nah, and then just signs off.
Just bring it up in your next proper podcast that we talked about the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, I'll read it in that podcast too. But we're in Luca.
We're in Luca, and it's actually probably one of the most visually entertaining, and I mean that literally. It's the most visually entertaining location in the entire game. It's a festival, and it's brimming with life. And it actually serves a couple of important roles. It's the place in which you learn more about Titus and Yuna, and you learn more about the importance of blitzball and the role that it plays in the world of Sphera. And the reason why it's such a big deal that there's this massive tournament is this is all they have. This is basically the only form of entertainment that they have to kind of take them away from the malaise of worrying about sin.
Yeah, and this is the moment where they show you how deeply Yevon and Blitzball are intertwined, that basically the leaders of the faith of Yevon have co-opted Blitzball as kind of a ceremony. Like, the whole reason this tournament is happening is to celebrate the christening of a new maester, basically.
Sure, so, and I don't think the game goes far enough in making that connection in the game, and that's actually a weak aspect to the story, is the characters are kind of presented there, they're introduced, but their importance and place isn't filled in until after the Blitzball tournament. And
yeah, I think most of the narrative work is done by the fact that Luca is the only location you've been to that isn't a shantytown. And that is because, and I think Waka explains it either during the introduction or a little bit later on, but the reason why Luca is able to survive and have all of this machina and thrive to a certain extent is because the Crusaders, the kind of military force, the only real military force outside of the Al-Bhed in the world of Final Fantasy X, will basically throw their lives at Sin over and over and over again whenever he approaches Luca, because they have to protect the Blitzball Stadium.
And I like Blitzball in terms of a presentation package. As a package, I quite enjoy it. It helps show the amount of life that's in Luca, and it also does a good role in showing how important sports is to the religious practices of the Spherans. I mean, it's united all these different races, cultures, and religions under mostly peaceful circumstances. There's one kind of little caveat there, but it highlights this universal nature of Blitzball, and then also kind of the intoxicating effects that it has on its fans, and the dangers of that intoxicating effect. An entire team is willing to kidnap Yuna for the sake of winning one match.
Well, that's not necessarily true. We know that a whole team is willing to kidnap Yuna. The
Sure.
Albed are trying to kidnap Yuna. We don't know that it's just to win the match, but that is what Waka believes is the case.
But even then, that is the only form of violence and strife that occurs in the blitzball tournament. So it's this rather incredibly universal, uniting event.
Yeah, and it is amazing that this is the only place where you see kind of technology for the most part. Machina.
Sure, and I
you
would
see
say
TVs. Like there are reporters, and there's a sports bar. There are kind of LED screens everywhere.
And I think that ends up kind of blowing an anachronism. If it's intentional, I guess I can forgive it, but I think it blows an anachronism in the logic and practices of Yevon.
Yeah, this is the first hint we get that Yevon is hypocritical.
Sure. And there's an even bigger hint of it in what we will hopefully talk later.
Yeah, shortly hereafter.
As someone who still has kind of, you would say, maybe only slightly above the tip of the iceberg, or like a little bit lower, I hope that they double down on that hypocrisy.
Yes.
Okay, cool. There's two things that I really don't like about the blitzball tournament. One, I think the structure of the tournament is this mangled mess. It's represented as being the World Series or Super Bowl of blitzball, and then you go into the finals after Waka wins one match, and then you're in the finals.
Well, I think that it is more the NCAA tournament of blitzball.
But you still play the first or the number one team. I
think they got a bye in the first round. There aren't that many teams. Like, there aren't that many people in this world.
Sure, but the fact that the game has what is ostensibly the World Series or Super Bowl, and then it's like, oh, hey, by the way, there's more blitzball. It's like, is there any story meat to this? No, you just do this for fun. It's like, then I'm not going to do it.
But how will you get Waka's overdrive reels?
Did you get Waka's overdrive reels?
Fuck no.
Exactly.
I didn't.
I think the biggest problem that I have is, and I mentioned this on the blog, I feel like the game castrates blitzball's importance because it spent 3 to 4 hours pontificating and just talking and extolling how blitzball has this important link to Yevon and Spira, and then it kind of becomes a side quest reference in passing only. And I think it should have continued to have been. Sports culture no longer becomes the secondary story objective. It's kind of something that you did in the very first initial part, and then that leads to different parts.
Yeah, and I think that the big thing with blitzball is the actual game is not great. Like playing blitzball,
it's a piece of shit.
Yeah. You manage. Do you want to tell the story of?
We'll get to that.
Blitzball?
We will get to this blitzball story.
Because I want to defend blitzball just a little bit, not the game. Like actually playing blitzball.
I totally agree with you. As a story piece.
No, but I mean mechanically. Like
okay.
So while playing the actual games of blitzball is like you said in your blog, it's a number. It's basically an equation, and Titus is the answer to all of them because he has the Jek shot, and the Jek shot is messed up. But the thing that is fun about blitzball, when I was playing it at least, was that you can recruit people from all across Spira, and that is kind of interesting. That you can kind of talk to all these people from different walks of life and find out that they are blitzball players, and you can sign them. Once you start becoming a GM, like for your team, it can be pretty fun because you can start seeing like one of the I guess interviewers, one of the TV people. Yeah. She's actually a great striker. She's a great shooter. There's a person in Makalania who is an excellent passer. There's a bunch of different, just like seemingly random people. I think someone in Djose, one of the Crusaders in Djose, is an excellent goalie.
Sure.
And all of a sudden you have to kind of go across the world and meet all these different people to find out that they are excellent players that should be on your team. And the other thing that's kind of interesting is that as you play blitzball, players like level up and advance and get better skills and stuff, and the relative status of each of the teams changes over time. Mm-hmm. So the Luca goers, all of their players are front loaded. Like they're good for a while, but as you keep playing the game, they immediately start getting outclassed by teams like the Albed Sykes and the Guados. I forget what their team
Guado
name is.
Gonads.
Oh, the goers? No. It might be the goer. No,
let's just call them the
goers.
Gonads.
Sure. They start getting eclipsed, and by the end of the game, the Kilika Beasts and the Besaid Aurochs, like all the Auroch players, are insane. They're all really good. And they start becoming the best, and they start out as the worst two teams, and they end up as the best two teams. And the players you don't sign will get picked up by other teams. So, like, if you let Keepa or one of the other Aurochs go, eventually they will be picked up, and they have dirt cheap contracts, and they will just murder you. You mentioned them go.
You mentioned Keepa. Is Waka a total dipshit in putting him as a goalie when he actually has the best growth in being a striker?
Well, he sucks.
God damn.
He sucks as a striker for a good long while. It's
then
like
he becomes the greatest thing in the history of blitzball.
Yes, and I think that's the joke of Keepa, is that he's a terrible keeper, but he is an excellent shooter by the end of the game.
He was a perfect keeper for me.
Yeah, but so why don't you tell your story?
Do you want me to tell the story? I think that's skipping like 4 or 5 things.
What other things?
Well, there's the initial kidnapping. There's a lot of stuff that happens. I think that... What did you think of... What do you think of the foreshadowing of Seymour and Yo Mika and the... Yo, man, this religious order is evil! It hits you kind of heavy.
Yeah, it hits you kind of heavy. Maester Micah is not a great dude, and it's pretty clear. They have ominous voices. This game is not subtle.
No, it's not subtle. But I do think I appreciate how the game does use or thinly attempts at foreshadowing by having the characters actually speak, not be interrupted, get what you want out of them, and then they leave the scene. And then come back. I think it's very anecdotal, but it works in the grand scheme of things. And the only time that I don't think it works is when it spends more time trying to develop Seymour as a character for the first half of his characterization.
Yeah. I mean, Seymour sucks.
Seymour, his accent is terrible. I'm sorry. It's the most inconsistent thing in the game. I think all the Guado's voices suck, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't love them.
And that blitzball tutorial is the worst goddamn thing. It's the worst goddamn thing.
I mean, I don't understand how it got made that way.
It's, for those that don't know, when you finally get the blitzball tutorial, it's a Final Fantasy VII-esque menu system where you click it, it plays a little bit of it for you, and then you take control of it, and you're practicing these mechanics in complete isolation of an opposing team. There's no kind of checks. Like, fighting games have better tutorials than this.
Yeah, like, definitely. The fact that they don't let you play it, it's not like you can seize control of the tutorial. They just don't let you.
They don't.
You have to watch these videos that don't tell you how the game controls at all, and you just have to try to keep it in your head, basically.
You know, like, if you're a designer and you want to teach a new minigame or mechanic, you know, maybe you would have a warm-up game with, like, robot opponents, or maybe, like, a team with reduced stats so I can, like, practice my shit.
Yeah, just like a bad team.
A bad team, you know.
What if you played the Kilika Beasts to start?
Yeah, what if I played anyone that I can just play around for a little bit?
Yeah. What then?
And there are like entire mechanics that the game just kind of yada yadas, as you would say.
Yep.
And like there's an entire camera mode that's actually secretly bullshit, but it says, oh yeah, by the way, there's a vision mode C. You don't need to use it, but it's there. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah, and there's like you can have one-on-one defense instead of zone. Like you can get pretty fancy with your team.
It tells you that you can equip techniques, but it doesn't actually let you do that.
Yeah, and you can't do that till halftime.
Yeah, what the fuck?
I don't know.
I still don't know what the tech copy ability is.
So tech copy is when there's a player on the opposing team who has a technique, and you can learn it. Like it indicates a little bit
So it's
how
like
you
blue magic, but blitzball.
Yeah, if it's used on you, you will learn how to do it. But
Right.
You need to mark up your characters with the person who has the technique so that they're paying
fuck
attention.
this.
And then, like, when it says tech copy, you need to hit a button, I think, to actually have them learn the technique.
Oh boy. Because hitting buttons in time with a visual prompt is one of the best parts of Final Fantasy X.
Yeah.
Fuck.
But if it makes you feel better, you can also use tech copy or that sort of concept in order to set up your man defense.
All right, so I this is coming from someone who really enjoyed Triple Triad, bred a golden chocobo in Final Fantasy VII, did all the chocobo hot and cold in Final Fantasy IX. I think this is the worst minigame in a Final Fantasy game we've played.
Yeah, it's probably... I think Tetramaster's worse. When do you want to go to bed?
The problem I have, and I'm not trying to argue that Chocobo Racing in 7 is good. I'm not trying to argue that Tetramaster is good. It's just... It's visually confusing. It has Byzantine controls. It's this feverish dream every single time you play it. And I don't feel like it's mechanically or control-wise intuitive. And like I said, and some people tried to defend the game, it's glorified algebra. And what frustrates me the most is the game tries to convince you that it's complex and it's dynamic. And to be perfectly honest, there's nothing complex about blitzball.
No.
It's a glorified addition and subtraction problem. When you get into a break, you know exactly what to do. There's two...
and it basically tells you, will this work out for you? And there's a little wiggle room, as you know.
Yeah, but even then, it's like, oh, they have 11, 5, 3, that's 18, I only got 17. Well, I'm fucked. I might as well give up. And...
Yeah, you really need a good die roll for that to work out for you.
It isn't a skill-based game. It's a math-based game. And when I think of sports game, I do think of like meters that you try to level up and increase the quality of the player. But blitzball is so brazen about its math. I just hate it. I hate it. And look, man, I think the biggest problem we've been we're ignoring the elephant in the room. Blitzball is fucking broken as shit.
Oh, yeah.
It's broken.
It's bad and broken.
It's the AI, the enemy AI is junk. It's so goddamn stupid. I'm amazed that this game shipped in this state. Because as anyone who plays blitzball can tell you, like moving behind your goalposts fucks up the AI every goddamn time. So turtling is a legitimate strategy. And, Gino, you mentioned it, but if you get the eject shot early, it's game over for quite some time. You can steamroll with Titus for a solid 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah, I mean, and eventually you unlock the eject shot 2, which knocks out 3 players and turns the ball invisible.
Like, it's broken. It's a broken goddamn thing. But even before you play your first legitimate match, I guess the reason why I feel so conflicted about blitzball as a thing is Luca is probably one of my favorite levels in the game so far. Like, as an actual level, in terms of its design and what you get out of it and what you see in the world, it's a really good level. And blitzball, when it's a part of the level, is really enjoyable. Watching the sphere, the water sphere, fill up and become the floating orb of water is a really cool visual. It's one of the strongest CG cutscenes that I think still aged magnificently. And I like what we do in Luca. I like the moment with Yuna and Titus in Luca before the first legit blitzball match, where she's kind of surrounded by the paparazzi, and it complements the theme of the game to where summoners are a major keystone to sphere and society. So I really like that. And, you know, I like the little one-off character moments with Titus and Yuna, like Yuna getting taught how to whistle. That scene's okay. I think that, you know, there's limitations to the acting, but I think it works to kind of establish that these two characters have a dynamic that's going to develop as the story goes on. And we're watching a burgeoning relationship between these two characters. So, yeah. There are some cool moments in Luca that are not blitzball is terrible. And, you know, the first one's kind of like Titus teaching Yuna how to whistle. That's a really good scene.
Yeah, that scene's pretty good, and Titus, like, rescuing Yuna and the fight with the Albed is pretty cool. I like the gimmick with the obliterator.
Yeah.
Which is pretty fun.
Yeah, I don't know.
And then you meet Orin. You get, after the blitzball tournament.
The Orin scene is probably one of the strongest action sequences in the entire game.
Yeah, when he shows his arms in the sling, and then he takes it out, and he's like, "What's up?" And he has a cool pose. You fight in the sphere. I think the kidnapping of Yuna kind of highlights how Final Fantasy X doesn't really know what it wants out of its female characters. For most of the game, Yuna in particular is a character of empowerment, but she still gets captured in the dumbest, hackneyed ways possible. The worst way is coming up. Good God. And, you know, I feel the same way about Lulu, especially given how she's constantly a perpetual source of fan service. And when we get to Riku, and we will talk about Riku, I feel like she definitely deserves more than what the game gives her. And it's just, the game kind of doesn't know how to treat women in the game as actual characters. It's got a weird sensibility, I will say that.
It's aggravating, at least to me. I mean, I think the best part about the kidnapping scene is when the game juxtaposes between the blitzball match and the rescue efforts. And for 90% of this scene, like, Lulu's like, man, that dumbass Waka getting his ass kicked. And then there's actually an amazing scene.
Yeah, when he's floating in the sphere and she's worried about him.
Yeah, and she's actually showing worry and concern about his state. And it kind of pulls all these pieces together to make something good out of what should be a really superficial scene.
Yeah.
And, you know, when we're on the Albed ship, we find out that Yuna is... Do we find out that Yuna is partially Albed?
Yes.
Okay.
Her eyes are green. Or at least... No, I think you find that out on the Mihan High Road.
No, we find out that she's, like, Albed when she gets kidnapped. She's like, did you meet a guy named Sid?
Oh, yeah. My uncle, Sid.
And, you know, they trust this super important, not, hey, buddy, don't tell Waka about this information to Titus, who's not acted like a total dipshit.
Who's a narc.
So, my greatest accomplishment in video game history. Actually, no, I wanted to talk about the scene where Yuna and Waka hug. I thought that scene was... It's like, oh, shit, they actually have a legitimate relationship. And I hope to see it develop over time. And so Waka is basically out of commission. He's gotten his ass handed to himself. And he announces his retirement and says Titus is the new captain. And then after everyone leaves to go to the match, and then Yuna leaves to go to the crowd to watch the event. I don't really understand how you watch blitzball. It's in a water sphere. Isn't that like a terrible way to watch a sport, is watch people play or swim in water? Isn't it basically impossible to watch? Isn't the water going to refract everything so as that it's like always blurry?
They're way into it. They figured it out. Machina.
Okay.
Occasionally people, I mean, if the introductory cutscene is anything to go off of, occasionally people just get knocked the fuck out of the water.
Yeah, I guess you're right. And then I guess, a wizard did it. But no, like when Waka and Lulu are alone in the locker room, does she hug him or is she just lifting him?
She holds him up, but it's kind of a half hug, half lift.
Yeah. It's just little moments like those. It's Final Fantasy X is the first Final Fantasy game where I've seen it actually take the time to depict interpersonal relationships with characters that don't revolve or devolve into the protagonist is a really good guy. He's everything. And to watch interpersonal relationships between Lulu and Waka develop is actually a really great thing to see.
Yeah. And I would say that their relationship will continue to develop.
It's I would argue one of the more successfully fully developed aspects of Final Fantasy X. Yes. Satisfying, and it's something that constantly rewards you.
I'm gonna admit something right now. While we've been talking about blitzball, I've been adding Jeremy Lin and some other people to an iconic scene from Final Fantasy X. And I gotta say, thank you, Jeremy Lin, for having your haircut. His haircut just is perfect for what I need.
Oh, God. So, before I talk about my story, on average, Gino, how long does it take you to win the very first blitzball game that you play?
10 minutes, because that's how... No, 5 minutes, because that's how long you have to play, because the game cannot be sped up in any way.
Okay, so it's always going to be 5 minutes.
Yes, there is no way to speed it up.
Okay. When you first played Final Fantasy X, did you beat the first match on your first try?
I don't think so, because I didn't know how to get the eject shot. I was bad at the eject shot minigame the first time.
But for me, I beat the first blitzball match on my first try in the most glorious, the most self-servicing, the most satisfying manner possible.
How was that?
Well, first off, I decided to basically tell everyone I consumed alcohol before, because up to this point I had heard that this was a nightmare. The first blitzball match is a glorified nightmare, and so I thought, man, this is a bad thing. I think that the tutorial is bad. I think it looks good, but okay. I'm going to drink some gin and tonics. And so I drank about 3 gin and tonics when I started playing the very first blitzball match. And when it started, I was still working on number 3, but by the time the match had gotten to halfway point, I think I was on number 4.
It's a lot of gin and tonic.
Hey, man, gin and tonics are delicious. Almost as delicious as, like, the many other wonderful food opinions that I have.
They're all bad. Don't ask him about food.
I didn't understand what the hell I was doing.
That's so unlike you.
I attempted passes every attempt I had. So basically, I would just pass the ball around like a hot potato. And then when there were breaks, they're called breaks, right?
It's halftime.
No. They're when you get surrounded by the other players. That's
yes. Yes.
So I would always do a tackle no matter what, which I think reduced the health or stamina of my players. I really don't like how the health is actually stamina and your other attributes are legitimately your. So, 1, I'm consuming alcoholic beverages. 2, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I'm passing the ball around. Like at one point, I realized that, oh, hey, how do I bring up the action menu before I get into a break? I didn't know how to shoot before people surrounded me. I didn't know how to pass before people surrounded me. So at one point, I just was not even passing the ball as much as I should have. And it was 0-0 for the entire proper match. I mean, the notoriously difficult Luca goers, I suspect they might have consumed alcohol or were on like a steroid night dream. Because I intercepted like 7 of their passes. They fumbled the ball 5 or 6 times.
They do. I mean, the AI is not good even when you're playing well.
And every shot they had on goal, Keepa blocked it. He was a literal brick wall protecting my goal. And I didn't know.
He does a decent job in the first match. Like, he's not that outclassed.
Yeah, I had no idea that he wasn't even a good... that he was a poor goalie until you mentioned it right now, because I thought he was the greatest goalie in the game. And
no, he's terrible.
So this is going to be a recurring theme, is I'm confused by the interface system of Final Fantasy X. In general, would you say that I am a quality Final Fantasy X player or an unsatisfactory? I mean,
you're bad at most video games that I've seen you play, so I'm going to guess you're not good at it.
I'm not good at Final Fantasy X. It goes into intermission where I have the ability to have techniques. I could have given Titus the jet shot, but I just I think I hit my fist on the keyboard, and then it immediately said, oh, so you don't want to do techniques? Okay, we'll move on to the next thing. So I didn't even have the best move in the entire game. And I even messed up even further by moving all of my players to different positions. Keepa was a forward, Titus was a goalie, I think Djose or Boda was the goalie. Basically, I should have lost. The score should have been 17-0, and we should have been the laughingstock of the history of blitzball.
As you should be. The Poseidon-Rocks are bad.
Yeah. At some point, I think it's like the last 5 minutes, Waka comes into the game, right?
Yes, he does.
And
he comes in as a conquering hero in the last 2 minutes.
Like, that scene's super contrived because, one,
Titus checks himself out of the game.
He checks himself out of the game, and Waka...
You can never do that again, by the way.
Oh, so I should have used the Venom shot at some point.
Yeah, that's a really good shot. I mean, for this early in the game, it's weird. You can poison people in the water.
Wow, so I probably should have equipped it and used it.
I mean, I think it comes pre-equipped, or
I never
get to go in the menu. That's fine.
Okay, so Waka valiantly led the Poseidon Aurochs to overtime because the score continued to be 0-0. And I never used the Venom shot because, again, I didn't know how to bring up the menu. So halftime starts. I get the ball on break. I pass the ball to Waka upon receiving it. I moved Waka to about midfield, and I finally decided, you know what, the hell with it. I am going to figure out how to shoot the ball without having to deal with tackles. So I basically smashed my left and right hand on the keyboard, hoping to figure out what the shoot button was. And, like, I'm just going like, da, and then basically I brought up the menu, but then I hit the keyboard again, and that selected normal shot from midfield.
Great.
The ball goes, it's on goal, and then it actually went through the goal and won the game instantly.
Great. Yeah, blitzball does have some randomness to it in a Tetra Mastery sort of way, where something that should always lose against something that should always win can occasionally, the numbers can screw with you.
So you're saying that blitzball is the Mario Party of Final Fantasy games?
Sure, why not? That's also bad.
Waka won the match in overtime with a regular-ass shot from midfield. It's the greatest accomplishment in my life. I got the maximum amount of satisfaction.
Dial that back. I assume you've done more important
This
things.
Is the greatest accomplishment in my life. I got the maximum. It's yes.
Hopefully, we can pass that with the selfie. But we'll see.
Waka retired, scoring the winning goal in his last match in overtime from midfield with a regular-ass shot, Gino.
He did. You sent Waka out right. Bang, bang.
Waka, waka, waka.
Waka Flocka Flame did a great job.
And I don't know what the cutscene is with Waka once all the stuff in Luca is done when he doesn't have the trophy. I don't give a shit.
He retires gracefully.
Who gives a shit? He had that goddamn trophy that kind of looks like a giant blue penis, and it was glorious. It's glorious. That scene, everybody should be able to do that. Like, I don't care if the goal, I don't care if the score for other players is 7-0. When Waka scores, it should be 10 points.
Yeah. The rarely seen 10-point shot in blitzball.
And, for as terrible as blitzball is, hey, at least the next scene is really fucking cool.
Yeah, so all of a sudden a bunch of fiends get loosed in Luca suspiciously, because I don't know how they got past all the Crusaders, but they're
like someone let them in. It's almost as if there's a conspiracy.
Someone let loose a whole bunch of fiends. Orin shows himself and goes to town on them.
God, that first cutscene with Orin is amazing.
Yeah.
It's this happy marriage of visuals. It does a real good job to say, hey, Orin is a fucking badass. You should be happy he's on your team. You should use him. It's so good.
He's a samurai-ass samurai.
Yeah.
He's got a jug of sake on his side. He's got his crazy, he takes his arm out from his yukata. It's not a yukata because it's a male thing.
It's a male thing. I would even argue that Orin is one of the few consistently good, and I put a keyword on consistently. Every good character in Final Fantasy X kind of has their stumbling blocks. I think Orin only has one for me. But basically everything the game attempts with him, I think, works. He has a cool swagger, there's a mystique to his character, and he actually develops over time in a way that's really compelling because he's the keystone to Tidus's past.
He's got his eye scar and his he's got glasses and he only has one eye.
Every part of his design is a part of his character. It's
his hair.
It's not like Lulu and her fucking belt dress that no one ever brings up or talks about how her dress is just made of belts.
Yes.
It's
versus
this
guy, amazing character.
Yeah.
Great design.
And I like how he isn't the stoic Ronin. I mentioned this on the blog. He's not the stoic Ronin who's kind of like the Vincent Valentine type of being a badass in the background. He actually has a character arc. And he has a softer side which develops over time that the game does a good job of developing. There's a genuine relationship between him and Tidus.
Him and Tidus, him and Yuna, I think that it's... The nice thing about Orin is that he's very different from all the other characters in terms of their relationship with Yevon and with the systems that govern the world. As someone who has been a Guardian and who has been through all of it, his focus is just, we have got to stay on the pilgrimage. Whatever, as long as Yuna is still on her pilgrimage, we're all good. I don't care what she does.
There's a workmanlike pragmatism to his philosophy that I think is a good alternative to Waka and Yuna.
And Lulu.
And Lulu.
All the people who believe in Yevon seem to, they at certain points are like, the tenets must be obeyed. And Orin's like, are you still on the pilgrimage? Did you get that summon you needed? Then we're fine.
And
whatever.
He's the more logical version of Tidus's fish out of water skepticism and Riku's outright rejection of Yevon.
Yeah, and his world weariness, I think, is really on point. And so when he shows up, you have a fight with him, and it shows that he has a piercing weapon. He kills something that other people can't. Then Seymour summons an Aeon that is... just lays waste to all of the fiends in the stadium.
I really like Seymour's initial moments because it's like, oh, Seymour, you're probably going to summon an angel thing. No, it's a giant fish monster that bleeds like cries blood. It's like, oh,
Yes.
you're not evil.
Just wait until you find out about his Aeon.
What?
That summon he
Yeah,
has?
it's anima.
Yeah, Anima.
Anima. Anime. When I rename it, I'm going to name it anime.
You can get that summon, and it has a backstory.
Is there a reason why it has, like, the Jesus Christ thing around its neck?
There is.
Oh, really? Okay, sure.
There's
Cool.
a reason why it has that necklace. There is a reason why it is all chained up. There's a reason why he can summon it.
Cries blood?
There's a reason it cries blood.
Ah, cool. Because I was going to say that, it's really great that this guy that the game is trying to frame as evil summons this horrifying monster that's crying blood.
Yep.
I think it's
There's
great.
a reason for all of it. You should. That's why I said you need to get all the destruction spheres.
Okay, cool. Oh, God, the destruction spheres. Oh, man.
They suck.
Oh,
So-
God, one coming up is bad.
After this moment, you go on the Mihen High Road, which is a down moment.
No.
Oh, what?
We're forgetting the greatest scene in the history of video games.
Oh, the Laffy scene.
No. Well, there's the scene with Auron.
The whistle scene?
No, there's the scene with Auron and Titus where Auron reveals that Jecht is sin.
Oh, yeah, that scene.
That scene's... I really like Auron in that scene. I like how Titus gets a lot of flack and bullshit for having a penchant for emotional outbursts, but I don't think that enough people give the game credit for trying to justify his penchant for being emotionally compromised. And I think in this case where they're talking about Jack being sin and his frustration about Auron dragging him into this world, I think that his emotions and the way that he conveys emotions is entirely justified. Like, there's a point where he needs to be dragged by Auron so as that Auron can say, I want to be your guardian. Oh, by the way, this asshole's coming along too. And, like, in the background, he's animating as if he's kicking in the air like a child, a toddler.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, you know, I feel like Titus's characterization is fine.
His whole thing is just that this game plays with such heightened emotions, and it plays in such a sphere where everything has to be dialed up to 11, that Titus, I don't know, if you get told that your dad is actually a giant whale monster that's eviscerating the world that you currently live in, that's a pretty heavy fucking thing to hear.
With characters that you love and, you know.
Or if you get sent 1,000 years into the future, like, he is one of the more ridiculous Final Fantasy protagonists in terms of backstory and their place within the world around them. And this is a series where the protagonist before him was a monkey man from another planet.
So I think that Titus in context is far better than Titus in isolation. When you look at Titus in context, I think his behavior makes more sense than what people give the game credit for.
Yeah. And then you have a heartwarming scene between Yuna and Titus is like, oh, if you whistle, I'll come running. And then she teaches her how to whistle, and that's cute. It's just the most heavy-handed flirting.
And then...
you go to the Mihen High Road.
No.
There's
the greatest scene in video game history.
Is the laughing scene this one, or is that on the High Road?
No,
I guess this is the laughing scene.
The laughing scene happens before the High Road.
Yeah, then they laugh because... and the context of that scene is that Yuna is explaining that she needs to practice basically being happy and projecting happiness because of her role in the world.
Yeah.
Like, people look to summoners for hope and inspiration, and so she can't be down.
I think the context of this scene is great.
Execution, not great.
Who cares? Who cares?
There's the spirit.
The spirit is there, and then I also think that, like, I think there's the dynamic of Titus trying to purposefully laugh ridiculously as a rib to Yuna. Like, he's trying to drag her into his bullshit, or this bullshit that she's subjecting him to. And I think that's great. I don't hate Titus's initial framing, because, you know, he's an incessant piss baby for the first half of the game. There's nothing that you can do. I think that Squall was a gigantic piss baby. I think that... Cloud is definitely a piss baby. And Zidane is a piss baby in spurts. Like, they're all babies. They all have the maturity of their
They're all
age.
teens.
They're all
all
teenagers.
teens.
And here's the thing that I said that some people reacted hostilely towards. I think that Titus is the most convincing teenager in a Final Fantasy game. He actually behaves like a teenager.
Yeah.
To where Squall was very clearly adults trying to write what they thought teenagers think, say, and do. Zidane was a little too mature, and fucking Cloud is basically emo fan wankery at some point.
Yeah, but I mean, Zidane lived a heck of a life before
I think that
the game starts.
I think that his maturity level is not necessarily appropriate for his age.
I mean, he was in a thief troupe. His dad beat him, and he traveled the world. Like,
and so it's almost as if the game should have had him depict neuroses or some form of psychological trauma.
I mean, it's almost as if he kept hitting on girls as a weird defense mechanism throughout the game. And projected this weird Casanova thing that he really didn't back up in any meaningful way.
I feel like Titus is the most convincing teenager in a Final Fantasy game.
Sure. I'll believe it. That's fine. No argument here. But Mi'ihen High Road.
No! So you don't like the laughing scene, or do you think that it's okay?
I think it's okay. I feel like it's overblown.
I think
feel
it's
like
definitely
the voice
overblown.
acting is not great. But it's not the worst thing.
I would even argue that the voice acting is not terrible. I think it's a clear attempt. I mean, it's a clear attempt that these characters, she's trying to force him to laugh. He's providing a forced laugh. She ends up getting dragged into it. And I think it's charming as fuck. I think that legitimately it's a really good scene. I legitimately like that scene.
I think it's fine. I don't love it. The only thing that I dislike about it is you can't skip it and it's very long.
Sure, but when you're watching it for the first time, it shows,
totally works. It works for me.
It shows that the game is willing to try to depict emotions that I've never seen a Final Fantasy game try to show. A breadth of emotions and it remains committed to those scenes, which is why I think it's fine that it's as long as it is. Like, yeah, the laughs are terrible. It's that the voice director in charge of the English dubbing of this game should be fired and never allowed to direct video game acting again. Ever. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You don't get work ever again. No.
I think 9 did it with the sleepover in the Black Mage Village. But, like, this is still a really good scene. Like, this, I enjoy it even with the stupid laughing that's been taken out of context and edited a million times for internet laughs. I think the scene in context is fine.
Okay, Mi'ihen High Road.
It's a lot of wandering.
I think it's probably one of the worst levels in the game.
Yes.
I think it's I get that what they want to do is they want to provide a quiet moment, like a moment to let the events of Luca resonate, but they basically did it in the worst way possible because the high roads are just completely awful. The visuals are drab and dull. It's short, but also super long, and it's no fucking fun to play.
Yeah, the encounter rate is very high. This is where you kind of start learning the rocks, paper, scissors of enemies.
Yeah, it's
they
almost like
throw a bunch of enemies out there. What? Go ahead.
I should have learned the rock, paper, scissors of the enemies.
Yeah, that is what this section is for. There's a bunch of enemies that, because Auron and Kimahri have piercing weapons, they can take out. There's some enemies that are magic, and Lulu deals with them. There's some that are just kind of whatever, and Yuna can mop them up. There's some enemies that are fast, so Titus has to deal with them, Flyers or Waka, and you're supposed to be just kind of rocks, paper, scissoring your way through all of these battles. But it's just a long road with a high encounter rate. The two interesting things I think about Mi'ihen High Road are the summoner who you can challenge with Yuna.
The game doesn't do a real great job of telling me that's probably going to be one of the hardest boss battles in the game at that point.
Yeah, but you can get that. I don't really care about the battle. The battle against her summon Unfortunately, I believe she gets to use Ifrit, and you have to use
Valfor.
So you have the weaker summon.
Yeah.
But
Messed up.
when you beat her,
Correct.
and she says, I think you have a chance at beating Sin, and Yuna goes, I think you do too, and she says, no, I can't. That's one of the heavier things.
I don't like that, and I'll tell you why. It
Why?
spoils, in the very first goddamn scene, I think it completely spoils what she is. And I feel like the game had the opportunity to build a mystery where you're supposed to piece all the pieces together, and basically it gives you the solved puzzle on the first go. And the fact that Yuna doesn't do enough to confront her in the second confrontation or any of the future confrontations is just contrived.
I think that it's cool that they have an unsent summoner who's just kind of like training other summoners because she wasn't able to defeat Sin.
I think that the discovery that she's a ghost should have not been revealed in the first confrontation.
That's fair. I like Ghost Summoner Lady. And then
I like Ghost Summoner Lady too, but she's really underdeveloped as a character.
Well, yeah, she's there to train Yuna and give Yuna new abilities.
How cool is that? It's like she can't leave until she knows that she's done something productive with her life.
Yeah, and when you find her the final place where you meet her, it's kind of a crazy thing. There's some cool stuff that you do there.
All of the other character interactions in Mihen High Road are terrible.
I like the historian.
Oh God, I don't like him at all because you're like, hey, do you want to learn about this random statue? It's like, yeah, I guess so. Sure. I'm now going to subject you to 5 minutes of exposition that you can't skip through. How do you feel about that?
It's not great, but I like him as a character. I like his fascination with weird stuff.
Do you know what it reminded me of? I never played this game, but I watched a friend play it from beginning to end when I was in the dorms. Did you play the game Lost Odyssey?
Yes.
360? Do you remember how every now and again the game would completely stop to force you to read a book?
Those were the best parts of the game.
I disagree because
all the short stories in that game were way better than the regular game.
I actually think that was a sign of the game cheaping you out of what should be better scenes within the narrative. Hey, you have a book in your game. Those are really nice, but it's still a book.
I wish that they were... I wish that the person who wrote those wrote the whole story.
That's exactly how I feel about the historian, and whenever Final Fantasy games subject you to lore, is put the lore into practice rather than it be a 5 to 10 minute lecture. Because it's nice for me to know, but there needs to be a hook, a way in which this lore is now developing the plot. And learning about Mihen is interesting, but not enough is done with it. So it just is kind of like the only reason why I go out of my way to talk to this guy is because these levels are already underdeveloped.
The Mihen story is that Mihen was this guy who started the Crusaders, and at first he was going out to defeat Sin, and Yevon said that was against the teachings, and then instead of excommunicating him, they co-opted him and made the Crusaders part of the Church of Yevon.
Which kind of sets
perhaps
up...
that's foreshadowing.
That's the downfall of the Crusaders. They're always willing to go above the teachings if it means defeating Sin. But it doesn't put a lot of the information that it presents you into practice. And it kind of reminded me of Lost Odyssey just taking its time to force you to read a book.
Well, all of the stories in Lost Odyssey that are in those books are way more compelling than the main story, and generally they are things that could not have been done within the framework of the narrative of the main story.
It's almost as if that you should have picked your battles and done one of those.
I mean, the whole point of... I'm not going to argue about Lost Odyssey here.
So, I think that
I like Lost Odyssey.
High Roads is a drab, dull, boring slog with...
And then you get a chocobo, and that's kind of cool.
God damn it. But that's the only place where you can use the chocobo, so why is it there? It's there for fan wankery. It's there for fan service. Don't even try and argue that the chocobo riding in that is not fan service.
I mean, it turns off random battles, so that's pretty great.
Sure.
And you can get some items by using the chocobo to jump to places you can't get to.
And those feathers are hidden in the background by being just these asinine little texture. It's like a pixel hunter.
Yeah, it's not great.
It's missed. And
it's not
great. It's just...
And then, isn't there another scene with the sunset and Titus and Una talk about like what they're going to do?
Actually, that's a great... The character moments with these new characters suck, but the character moments with the main cast is actually kind of spectacular. I think that it's your first time going into the hut, the travel agency, which I like how that introduces the uniqueness of the dress, customs, and architecture of the Al Bhed.
Yeah, Rin is pretty great.
Rin is also kind of, it's like, oh, hey, it's the game's first attempt. Well, despite Riku, but it's been a long time since Riku. That there's really a face to the Al Bhed. There's a face to this culture that has been so demonized by Yevon. And it's like,
not only is there a face, but like his travel agencies are all over the place. And so you kind of get the sense that the Al Bhed are an integrated part of society. They are everywhere and yet are disrespected and discriminated against.
It's almost like it's a segregated society.
Yep.
And it's kind of like amazing how, the church manipulated the people of Spira to be racist.
Yep.
Oh, cool. So I thought that was great. You learn a lot with the confrontation or the scene with Yuna. There's one reason why I really like the sunrise sunset scene, and I feel it's like the one time where Titus's penchant for asking questions about the practices of Yevon is really poignant and resonant, because he starts asking Yuna, it's like, well, why do you do that? Well, okay, so sin disappears. What happens to sin? It's like, I don't know. It's like, don't you think it's weird you don't know? I guess I never questioned it. It's like, it's as if the game was trying to foreshadow that there's a corrupting force to the practices of... Yep. And it's actually really good at doing that. It's really good at showcasing that there's this sinister aspect to Yevon.
Yep.
And, it's one of the few times where Titus being untouched by the Church of Yevon actually is used in a compelling manner to further the plot and develop the plot.
Mm-hmm. And I think that his questioning, I think it does a good job here in just saying that him being a fish out of water allows him to ask questions that other people are socially conditioned not to.
Yeah. And, we actually find out that we need to go to Xanarkand, and that kind of conveniently pulls him back into the story, because at this point, the only reason why he's still on this pilgrimage is, one, because he has the hots for Yuna, and two, because Oran told him to. And so now he has an actual character-based reason to be on the pilgrimage.
Yep, he wants to see what happened to his homeland.
Yeah, he wants to see it for himself.
And so you march on and you go to the Djose. You head towards Djose, and you have a hard time entering Mushroom Rock Road, which is the area kind of on the way to Djose Temple. Seymour shows up, and there's a Crusader initiative happening in Djose, and so you're not allowed through. Seymour comes, he pulls some strings in a totally not creepy way, and then you get through. You, again, have to walk through. It's amazing that they did two high roads back-to-back, like two wandering sections.
Oh, God damn it.
Mushroom Rock Road sucks, too.
Oh, God, it's so bad. I actually think Mushroom Rock is dumber, because literally 2 steps away from you will be Crusaders and Knights. It's like, well, fuck. I guess you didn't do your homework this time. And
the cool thing about these areas, the one cool thing about these areas, is that every single person you talk to while you're walking through them will give you stuff and say, good luck on your way, which I think is kind of cool.
So, I think it also plays into the we are on a pilgrimage.
Yeah, we're on a pilgrimage, and these people want to help us, which is, I think, a little bit different than most Final Fantasy games, where even though you are trying to save the world, no one gives you shit. You have to pay for everything.
Or you do what we did in 9, 8, and 7. You go into people's houses, open their chests, and steal their shit.
And you rob them blind. This game, they give you help.
Maybe I was still under the effects of gin and tonics, but I thought that the message that the game sent about the Crusaders and Yevon is kind of a garbled mess here. I don't feel like it imparted a clear message as to why Seymour or what the church wants to get out of the Crusaders fucking up.
So
is it a power play? Do they want to eliminate possible competition to the church? Is it trying to reaffirm its supremacy? Are they trying to naturally funnel the people back to the church because now the Crusaders are gone?
It's a couple of different things. One, so what they're trying to do in this sequence is attract Sin and then use this Albed Machina that the Albed found recently to blow him up. Basically, it's a weapon that they think is strong enough to kill Sin. When you're allowed kind of into the planning tent, Maester Keenock, the leader of the warrior monks, talks to Auron, and Auron's like, why are you letting them do this? Like, they're going to fail. And he's like, yeah, but look, we know they're going to fail, but you gotta, like, let them, basically. Or, like, it doesn't matter if they fail. And Auron goes, the faithful will be saved, and the heretics will perish.
So is it just a purge of non-believers?
It's not a purge, it's a display. It is basically, they are creating their own terrorist attack. They are creating their own cataclysmic event that will... I don't know
if I buy that, because I don't feel like that's the clear message that I got out of what I saw.
Well, what's happening is all of the faithful people are staying up at the tent, all the maesters. But all of the people who are choosing to use Albed Machina and fight are on the front lines getting killed by Sin. And so the Maesters of Yevon are going to walk away safe, and all of the Crusaders are going to die, and the ones that survive will be like, oh my goodness, we should never betray the teachings again.
Okay, sure. That's more of what I got out of it.
And it's not because the Crusaders are gaining too much power. It's that the Maesters feel like they need to let these people try their attempts that they know will be futile, so that they can demonstrate
it's kind
that
of
those
laissez-faire.
They don't work.
It's very laissez-faire. Let it be.
Well, I think it's more just like, we know this won't work, and even though we could guide them away from doing this, we need to every once in a while, we need to let people relearn the lesson that if you don't follow our teachings, you get smoked.
And there's a couple of scenes before... Well, there's the reveal about Waka. That is probably one of the better parts.
His brother was killed during one of these maneuvers with Albed. So it's like a team-up between the Crusades.
It's almost as if like an event like this has happened before. And it serves a purpose for the goal of the church, furthering the church's positions.
Yep, and it's almost like... That is why Waka has a deep-seated hatred of the Albed.
It's almost as if the game sends the message that Waka is the result of events like this.
Yep. So he basically blames the Albed and their Machina for his brother dying.
Which of course he would!
The Albed and their Machina constantly... They're the closest things to defeating Sin without using summons. And so people keep getting attracted to the new weapons they find, and they keep failing because Sin is too powerful. And so people blame them for Sin's continued existence because they keep fighting him in quote-unquote improper ways. Mm-hmm. But I believe Titus raises the claim, like, if Sin dies and comes back, why do we keep
fighting him? Why don't you just put him in a zoo?
Yeah, so
put him in an aquarium.
The sequence in Mushroom Rock Road where Sin is... like the battle with Sin happens, I think is one of the most powerful sequences in the game.
Yeah, it is.
And one of the Crusaders who comes from Besaid will end up dead, depending on who, like, some dialogue choices you make. It could be Gato, it could be Luzu, or Gata, or it could be Luzu. You eventually wake up, Titus, like, wakes up on the beach after you fight some stupid boss, and he is basically surrounded by bodies.
Mm-hmm.
And if you like walk up to the bodies and click, like he will have a different thing to say for each of them, and you kind of wander this beach until you find whichever crusader survived, just like not being able to deal with the carnage. And then Yuna teams up with Seymour and Auron to defeat the Sin Spawn a second time.
I thought the first battle with the Sin Spawn was super long and not fun at all.
It depends on how over-leveled your team is.
It depends on how well you understand how to use the elemental system in the game.
Yeah, it helps if you know what you're doing.
I know what I'm doing and have scan on my weapons.
Yep. So that sequence is kind of fine. I just really enjoy the Titus swimming after Sin.
Okay, there's that, and I also like how Yuna's like, I have to stop this pain and agony. I'm going to do this summon. He's like, bitch, please.
Yeah, you'll die.
You're going to die.
Kill you.
He'll kill you. Stop the madness. And it's like, Yuna has this earnestness to stop destruction like this. And
Seymour doesn't.
And then also, I like how when she has to perform the sending, Titus comments how she's been dancing for like hours and she's not stopping.
Yeah.
And I like how that's probably the most powerful scene there.
I enjoyed that when he's swimming after Sin, you see that there is an underwater civilization, like a city that he is swimming through, because this land used to be something.
Yeah.
And Sin destroyed it. Yeah. It's destroyed it so many times that now it's this blasted landscape.
Sure. I guess you should go ahead and say you swim after Sin. I like the idea of him swimming after Sin. I like the idea of Titus swimming after Sin. It kind of reminded me of Final Fantasy VIII, where there's a scene where Squall has Renoa, and she's unconscious, and he just picks her up and says, fuck it. And then he says, I'm going to run to Esther. I'm just going to pick her up and does it. And I feel like that scene is great because it's super hilarious. But this scene with Titus is kind of resonant because Titus is an impulsive teenager that feels responsible for this destruction because this destruction was caused by his father.
Yep. And I think that some of his monologues can be a bit overwrought in this section, but I think that this is one of the high points of the whole game, is kind of showing this destruction, showing the callous disregard for human life of Yevon, showing all these people striving against all odds to try and defeat this common foe. It shows a unity that the game up until this point hasn't shown. Like, there's a tolerance of other races in the blitzball tournament, but there's not a fealty, like a cooperation between them. Whereas here it shows what a unified Spira might look like. And then afterwards, everything's crashed on the beach, and you have to keep going.
Do you want to talk about the dream sequence with Titus underwater?
Is that one where his dad is drunk? And,
correct.
And tells him to go away. I can quit drinking whenever I want. And then Titus says, "Why don't you quit drinking now?"
Correct.
And he says, "I'll do it tomorrow." Yeah, correct. I mean, Titus. So this is one of those moments where I am ill-equipped to talk about this the way you would want to, because I know too much. I know where this is going, and I know what this all means. And so I'll let you talk.
I don't want the game to go where I think it's going.
Where do you think it's going?
I think it's going to... Well, we've already seen Macalania, and there's something about this characterization of Jack that I really don't appreciate.
What don't you appreciate?
I don't appreciate using the specter of alcohol abuse as a plot device if you're not going to fully commit to it.
So you've been to Macalania.
Correct.
You know the Ject sphere?
I understand where you're going with this, but you don't have a character like Auron approach Titus and say, "Hey, but buddy, I just want you to know your father really loved you." That is where I think the game crosses the line and becomes irresponsible.
No,
I feel like okay, I'll keep playing this, but let me just say what I want to say.
Go ahead.
With what I have experienced, I feel like with the initial characterization of Jack, the initial setup of alcohol abuse as a plot element and the repeated reminders of characters that Titus should appreciate his father, that his father was well-intentioned, he meant well. The game conveys the myth of the romantic drunk.
So I'm gonna just go ahead and spoil some stuff.
No,
because I want to. It's not like a big spoiler. It's not a big spoiler. You know how that you've seen this Jack Spheres in Macalania, right?
Correct.
Remember, you get to see a little bit of...
Yeah, I see the first Jack Sphere.
So those after, like, towards the end of the game, are all over Spira when you get to backtrack, and you can find them in a number of different places.
Okay.
And Jecht, so he leaves all of these spheres all throughout Spira, and you can find them, and you can kind of piece together Jecht's journey with Braska. The reason why everyone's opinion of Jecht is what it is, and they keep telling him that, you know, your dad wasn't that bad and you need to understand, is because he quit drinking in Sphera at some point. He has a moment where his alcoholism really gets him and Braska and Orin into trouble, and he gives up drinking. So many of the people that tell Titus that his dad was a hero and his dad was a great man never knew the Titus that Titus knew. Never knew the Jecht that Titus knew, because he had changed. So it is literally, and I wrote an entire long blog post, like a couple thousand words, about like Titus and Jecht and the relationship between alcoholism and sin, and like all of these things were big themes. I've written about it if you want to find it on my blog on Giantbomb.
Sure, I'm willing to read that, but I would say then you look, the problem that I would even have with that is, okay, great, he quit alcohol abuse. Doesn't that then belittle the trauma that he's already caused to Titus, his mother, and everything prior to giving up drinking?
No, I think that it shows that different sides of people, that people can be different depending on the context with which they are viewed. That Titus only knows this man from when he was 10, like up till he was like about 10 years old. So his impression of Jecht is frozen at that alcoholic asshole who abused him and kind of like took his mother away from him. His vision is partial, whereas Yuna has the opposite, almost the exact opposite impression. She only knows the Jecht who was a loyal guardian to her father who defended him to the end. So each of them have these partial views of Jecht. So does Orin. Like, all these different people have their own opinion of who this man was, and all of them are imperfect. And I think that it's kind of a really freaking interesting way of doing this game, because Jecht, for as much as he is central to the plot and central to all these characters and their motivations, he is almost never present. Other than a couple of spheres that kind of tell you his story, and some other, like a couple of cameo things, like dreams and stuff, he's almost not in the game. But the specter of him is such a big thing. And hey, maybe the specter of him is like a whale-sized thing. So maybe it's all a metaphor. Who's to say? I mean, it's named Sin, so maybe it's a metaphor. Maybe the sins of the father.
I will promise you I will continue to keep in mind, but for me personally, there's
I would agree.
Discomforting aspect to this part of the story, and its oscillations are disquieting.
Yes, but I think that the game plays with Jecht's, like, it doesn't play with it. It paints Jecht's alcoholism as a problem. It does not forgive what he did.
Oh,
I think
and
that it very explicitly doesn't.
I absolutely feel like that it does apologize for it.
I think that the characters that are talking to Titus do not know what he went through, and Titus's
and there's no exploration of what and why Titus is insistent about that, and so there's no empathy from those characters.
When he does the blitzball thing, and then Yuna and him talk on the ship, when he learns the Jecht shot, he says, "My dad was an asshole. He was like not a good guy."
And so she continues to bring up the fact that there's no exploration about why he feels that it's as if the rehabilitation process is not initiated when there's evidence that it should.
I just think they both have such different perspectives on who this guy is. They both have such partial information that it's hard to even reconcile. Titus didn't even know that the Jek that they were talking about was his dad. Okay. Because they sounded like such different people. He literally didn't know that they were talking about his dad. He didn't believe them that it was his dad. So I think that it's just it's an interesting thing. We'll see how it plays out. After this moment, you go to the Djose temple. You get...
That's the worst temple so far.
Yeah,
Is that the one with ice?
No, that's the electricity one.
Oh, okay, fine. The fun one with the ice is the worst.
Yeah, the electricity one I think is pretty cool because it's
at least visually interesting.
It becomes a temple when someone's praying, like the rocks get electrified, which is super cool. You meet Isaru and his guardians there. They are another summoner and his two brothers Maroda and Passe, who are kind of going around also on their pilgrimage. You see a lot of Crusaders dying. You can actually see whichever Crusader from Besaid does not make it, whoever that is. They're in kind of I think it's a travel shop, a Rin's travel shop in the back, like being actively worked on when you get to Djose, and then when you leave, they're gone. They're dead. And
wait, what? Who's dead? What?
So the Crusaders from Besaid, Gata, and Luzu,
mm-hmm.
whichever one doesn't make it, mm-hmm. you can actually see them in the back of, I think it's Rin's travel agency being worked on by doctors. And you can talk to them, and they're like, don't talk to us now, we need to help these people. And then when you leave the temple the next day, the one who survives talks to you and says, I'm going back to Besaid, I'm done with this. And the one who didn't make it is gone, which I thought was a nice touch.
Yeah, that is a nice touch. I like the time when you meet the other summoners. The dude who's literally accompanied by his two brothers.
Yeah. Yeah. Isaru's he seems like a pretty cool guy. Like, compared to Donna and Barthelo, like, this is a lot more of a rival situation, like a friendly rival
situation. An arbitrary rivalry, I would argue, probably.
Yeah, and it is kind of weird that they're all rivals to defeat this gigantic and, like, evil instead of just cooperating, but what can you do?
So you get the summon Ixion.
Yep, you get an electric horse.
I called him, so I started having fun with naming my characters, which you would know is probably a bad idea, but I called him Horseman, all caps.
Oh, you didn't call him Selfie?
No, I called him Horseman, all caps.
Okay, one day he'll be Selfie, and it'll all be okay.
So the Moonflow. It's probably one of the coolest scenes.
Yeah. Let's go over that, and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, sure. The Moonflow is actually a pretty good place to stop, in my opinion, because I really like this scene. I think the characterization here is really great. I quite enjoyed the dynamic between Waka, Lulu, and Titus. Because
Riku. Oh, you also get Kimari and Biran and Yankee again. And they warn you that summoners are getting snatched.
Yeah, okay,
and then
sure.
On the way over the Moonflow, you get attacked by... Well, first there's the conversation about this Machina city built over the river.
Yep.
And Waka sees it as a parable about the folly of man, doing something that's against nature, using technology to do something that is stupid. And then Titus says, well, wouldn't it be super useful for, like, commerce if you were over the water? And Waka's like, nah, this is about hubris. And then Yuna gets kidnapped.
No, the shoe puff I thought is a super cool thing.
Just the shoe puff being a thing?
Yeah. And also the one where you're looking at the spirits rise from the lilies.
Yeah.
The water lilies.
Yeah, the pyreflies.
The pyreflies, it's like, the Moonflow is one of the most beautiful scenes. Although
this game has a visual style that is really good.
The place where you go into the shoe puff is one of the most mist-ass looking mist levels in the entire game. It looks like something from Riven. Mist. It looks like Riven, yeah. It's like, oh, should I be using the weird little lift thing that puts people on the shoe puff to figure out a puzzle in terms of I have to put stones in order to level it up and then get
What
onto the
sound
shoe puff?
does the shoe puff make? That way I
On
can...
the fourth frame of animation, which you then need to input it into Morse code. But remember to have your notebook so as that you can actually translate the Morse code into numbers.
My soul was escaping through my mouth.
I really like I think that the game also does a pretty good job of framing Waka's intolerance, both religious and racial.
Yep.
He constantly is talking about, man, this stupid fucking technology, right? And then Titus is usually, no.
I came from a place where technology was real good. He's like, no, hubris. Well, Waka, you live in a fucking island.
Yeah, there's also a real good thing to where he's like, man, technology is evil. It takes powers away. So, and then Titus is like, well, kind of like the stadium and blitzball. It's like, oh yeah.
Well, that's different. That's okay.
So
he said that's okay.
And then there's this really good scene where it's like, okay, and it's like Titus being really earnest, and so he's not trying to maliciously burn these characters. And he's like, okay, so what kind of machines can we not use? They're like,
the ones Yevon says we can't. Okay.
And then they start saying, 1,000 years ago, we got punished by sin.
Yep. There was a war, and sin came.
But wait, why did Yevon tell you to stop using Machina?
They did. They just did.
But
we need to keep talking to History Boy.
Okay, fine.
Keep talking to History Boy throughout the game.
Okay.
And when you can double back, there's a place I'm going to tell you to double back to because he tells some good stories.
Yuna gets kidnapped again. It's fucking stupid. It's some
Yep, and it's
bullshit.
Riku who kidnaps her.
It's some bullshit damsel in distress shit.
And then you save her underwater, and then Riku joins your team.
With another establishing camera shot on her fucking ass.
Yep, her getting out of her wetsuit.
With her ass
she's supposed to be
in the scene.
She's supposed to be 15 or 16 in this game.
Yeah. It's almost like the game depicts a minor in a sexually suggestive way, kind of like all anime ever.
Yep. This is the most Japanese Final Fantasy game in all ways. And she is immediately made a guardian. Auron looks her in the eyes and immediately knows she's an Albed because Albed have swirly eyes. But Waka doesn't figure it out.
This guy's... Oh, I kind of get it. Oh, I'm finally piecing it together. Waka is just told to hate the Albed, but he doesn't actually think about it or learn about what the Albed are or what it means to be Albed.
Nope.
What?
His hatred, it's almost like
it's blind?
It's blind hatred, and he didn't even realize there was an Albed around him until... I mean, he still hasn't in your game, so maybe he never does. It's almost as if he's ignorant.
It's almost as if he's been corrupted by the people who have told him to be racist?
Yeah. It's almost as if he's ignorant of others and their ways. And it's not formed from a well-reasoned perspective. And with that, I think we will stop. When we come back...
Predictions.
Oh, fine.
Oh, wait. No, wait. So we have gotten to Macalania.
Yeah, you know what happens
so I guess,
up to Macalania.
Sure. We won't do predictions this time. So the real question is do you want to have the next podcast be from where we're stopping right now to Macalania, or do you want me to play a little bit more?
You can play a little bit more. It's just I'm a little time constrained for this episode.
No. That's totally understandable. So right now we have Guado Salam, Thunder Plains, and Macalania. I'm right now in the weird desert level I saved.
Yeah.
Do you want give me a name and then I'll get to it.
You should get to the Calm Lands.
Okay.
You should get to the Calm Lands. I'll just say that.
Okay, cool. Do you want me to complete the Calm Lands, or do you want
just get there. Get there. Get to the beginning of the Calm Lands.
The
Calm Lands suck.
I'll do one. Oh, really?
They suck. I hate the Calm Lands.
Man. I'm trying to
think. But that's fine. I mean, it's just that it's kind of one gigantic Mi'ihen high road.
Oh, fuck.
It's a big map. It's the biggest map in the game,
So
and it's pretty empty.
It could be better than the Mi'ihen High Roads. Hopefully, there's no chocobos.
There are chocobos.
Okay, so it's going to be the worst thing since Mobius Final Fantasy.
It's it's the biggest map in the game, and the encounter rate is high, and you need to get from one side to the other. Ugh, I hate the Calm Lands.
So
but
I complete the Calm Lands.
no, you just get up to them.
Okay, got it.
You don't have to do anything in them. Just get up to them. I don't want to say what's before the Calm Lands, because I feel like that might be a spoiler, so I'm saying the Calm Lands because that means nothing to you.
Okay. So
all right. So thank you, listeners.
Final Fantasy X. I like it.
Yeah. You like it the most so far.
I like it more than you. That's the weirdest thing. Because whenever I talk to you, you make it seem like this game is like regaining prestige with you.
I really like 10. I mean, I like it. It's just that I like 8's craziness more. I like 9's everything more. And 10, I think it's just I forgot to ask slow.
You. So has 10 bumped down 5?
I don't know. I like the mechanics of 5 a whole lot. 10, when you get crazy with the sphere grid, 10's pretty great too.
I think I really like playing 10 more than 8 and 9.
I like playing 10 less than 8 or 9. I like playing it less than 5 too.
I'm just an anti-ATB guy. I just don't like ATB.
I like the combat, and 8, I like how broken 8 is.
Yeah, I understand that perspective, but the reason why you like it, okay, we can stop talking, but the reason why you like it is because you can speedrun that game.
I mean, I can speedrun 10 too, but speedrunning 10 is more boring than speedrunning 8.
Okay.
To me.
Okay, that's a fine perspective.
10 you can do some crazy stuff too with the sphere grid. But
I just like the seamless swapping of the characters. I like
that too.
I like the resolute turn system. I like how you can manipulate the turns rather easily.
Yeah. I like all that stuff. My problem is just the swapping everyone in and out of battles makes the battles way longer.
So then pick 3 or 4 characters out of the team that you like.
Well, the problem is if you don't level up the characters who you don't like, you don't get access to their parts of the sphere grid. So you need to level up multiple characters.
And there are weird moments where there are character-specific scenes. I guess that's right.
Yeah, and there are some moments where they talk in battle, like, "Oh, hey, you."
That's kind of cool. Those scenes are the worst. I do like it when... Okay, we can talk about it later. But
yeah,
I think the only game which has done character-specific moments the good, and I think you're going to disagree with me, is probably Final Fantasy VII.
That's fine. I don't... You're entitled to your opinion.
I just think that... Yeah, okay. All right.
So...
Send your basketball emails to the Final Fantasy podcast.
All your basketball emails. If you also have a ludicrous opinion about the Brooklyn Nets, go ahead.
Do you have a basketball question for our fans to respond to?
Do I have a basketball question for them?
Yeah.
Who's going to win the NBA Finals? It's not going to be the Brooklyn Nets. It's going to be the Golden State Warriors.
All right.
But
the Nets are fucked. The story is good. It's a fun game to play. You should probably be playing with us. Please send your emails if you have them.
Yes, and remember, at deeplistenspod, deeplistens.libsyn.com, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. And on May 5th, through 7th will be the Giantbomb Community Endurance Run. ZombiePie will be playing Final Fantasy VIII. I'll be playing some Final Fantasy V.
I'm going to be playing it 24
Other weird stuff
hours.
will happen. Yep. Remember, join hashtag Team Selfie.
Oh, God damn it.
Hashtag Selfie.
Oh,
and God. You can do that at fundraise.pencilsofpromise.org/GB Community Endurance Run VII. And just be sure to select ZombiePie as the person you donate to, or me. You can select Gino and Jen.
Don't accidentally donate to the team page instead of Gino's page.
Don't do that again. And donate to either of us. But if you donate to him, tell him
Just
to
say
name
selfie,
a thing
selfie. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Till next time. Thanks, Internet.
All right.
Peace.
Bye, Internet.